It's been blazing hot in Metro Atlanta, like scorched earth kind of hot, a level of heat where you need one of those moisture suits from Dune to survive. But somehow hotter than all of that is the bat of one Marcell Ozuna, and that coming after Eddie Rosario was named NL Player of the Week. It wasn't that long ago, like around the All-Star break, we were having conversations about these being two of the least productive bats in all of baseball. Things have most certainly changed for them in a very, very hot Braves lineup. Welcome into another episode of BPTV. Cory McCartney and Grant McAuley with you as always. And Grant, we've got a lot to dive into after a series win over the Mets that secured some Atlanta era history and a home run barrage that nearing record territory in its own.
Yeah, it has. It's been on that pace for quite some time, and it doesn't seem to show any signs of slowing down because just about the time that one or two guys get scorching hot and maybe cool off, it seems like one or two more guys step up and just carry that mantle for a little while, and they just keep passing that baton 1 through 9 in this lineup. So it's been very impressive. It has also been very hot. In the words of one of your favorite bands, we might as well be walking on the sun here lately.
There you go. So let's get into all those home runs. And there are so many ways to dissect this, but we start with the number 240. That's the collective number the Braves have going into this weekend series against San Francisco. There's the pursuit of the single season MLB team record, Matt Olson gunning down a franchise mark, the depths of the homers in this team with 5 players with at least 25, 7 with at least 20. What stands out to you as maybe the most impressive part about this for a team that we know without question is going to end up hitting more than any Braves team in a single season ever?
Yeah, I mean, they're only 9 away from that as they head into this weekend series and this road trip, and it could be wrapped up by the time the weekend's over if they get on a nice little run, but we'll see how exactly long it takes because Coors Field awaits, and that seems like a great place to break a home run record. But putting all of that aside, I will actually go with a stat that is not home run related necessarily, but always seems to be inextricably linked and tied to home runs. That, of course, is strikeouts. The Braves were second in Major League Baseball in strikeouts, about 1,500, just shy of that in 2022. It was always the thing that, yeah, the Braves lineup is powerful, but if they don't hit home runs, this lineup strikes out too much. Is that going to be a problem? Well, in 2023, that's not a problem because the Braves are 24th in Major League Baseball in strikeouts. And that, Cory, to me, is one of the most striking reversals of a club's, overall approach and success level that I think I've ever seen. I mean, you expect incremental improvement. Maybe they drop from 2 to somewhere in the 10 to 15 range if things go really well. But to drop into the 24th or 25th spot, which is where they've been for most of the season, it's a striking change. And, the Braves, they're a club that obviously likes to attack, be aggressive. They hit the ball harder. They barrel it up more. They hit the longest home runs and the most of them in Major League Baseball. It's just crazy to see what has been assembled here and the fact that it's not just dependent on Ronald Acuna Jr. or on Matt Olson or whoever it may be that's kind of on a hot streak at that time. This is a lineup with so many threats and so much productivity and so much power. We've never seen a Braves team like this.
Yeah, they're on pace for 308 homers with 36 games remaining in the regular season. They're currently, as you mentioned, 9 away from that 2019 regular season mark for the franchise. They're 39 off the 2019 Dodgers for the NL mark, on pace to surpass the 2019 Twins. A whole lot of homers, obviously, in the 2019 season across the board, by the way. But think about it. I mean, 5 players with at least 25 home runs when you think about Matt Olson, Ronald Acuna Jr., Ozzy Albies, Marcell Ozuna, Austin Riley. That's a franchise record. They're probably going to have 5 with at least 30. There's also 7 with at least 20 when you include Sean Murphy and Eddie Rosario. 1 away from the 2003 Red Sox and 2019 Twins, of which Rosario was a part of, who shared the record with 6 of at least 20. I don't know that we're going to see a tear from Orlando Arcia, who needs 6 to get to 20. Michael Harris II, who's 9 away from that. But that, to me, just the depth of the amount of home runs on this. I mean, obviously what Matt Olson is doing, with chance here to take down Andrew Jones in that 2005 team record. But the fact that so many guys are doing this, and we talk about how hot Marcell Ozuna is right now, the week that Eddie Rosario just has, that to me is like maybe the most stunning part about this, because we can talk about what Olson's done across his career. The fact that so many guys are doing this at once, it's just mind-boggling.
It really is. I mean, and he had a chance, and I know Ozzy Albies going on the injured list. He's hopefully not going to be there for very long, and we might get into that a little bit more later. But you looked at what Ronald Acuna Jr., Ozzy Albies, Austin Riley, and Matt Olson were doing. You had at least a chance, statistically speaking, on pace at the possibility of the top 4 guys in the lineup pushing 40 home runs. Now, Matt Olson's already there. Ronald Acuna Jr.'s quest for 40 and beyond is what it is. We know Austin Riley can get hot and hit a bunch of home runs in a short amount of time because that's what he's done here in the second half. And Ozzy Albies seemed to be trending towards an upper 30s finish himself. So that, I think, is another exciting aspect to look at. Now, all of a sudden, Marcell Ozuna is on the same pace as Austin Riley, Ozzy Albies, and Ronald Acuna Jr. in terms of home runs. So, as you mentioned, 30 homers. Again, that's something that I think several Braves are going to finish with because they're knocking on the door already. It's just an impressive all-around look when you consider just how many different guys are hitting either career highs or you add it all up and you find that an MLB record could be set by this Braves club that hit a bunch of home runs last year and clearly was capable of doing it. I just don't know that anybody could have foreseen that it would all come together this way for the Braves to be able to take down a record like that and do it with such a complete lineup 1 through 9. It has been very impressive to watch, and I'm sure for opposing pitching staffs, very scary.
Olson sitting on 43, on pace right now for 55. So think about that. 55 home runs, and you go through those single season totals. And when we get out of the PED era or guys like Ken Griffey Jr., who didn't really have to deal with those suspicions, but you're talking about a pace that would put Olson in the top 10 or 11 seasons ever. When you take away those PED guys, the 4th most ever by an NL player. We know, look, Olson was good last year. He hit 20% above league average, had 34 bombs, was one of the bright spots in the NLDS. We talked about this before, how you can make the argument that this is shaping up to be the best offensive season we've ever seen from a Braves first baseman. I think things would be nothing would be cooler to me than a closing stretch where Olson is challenging for 60 and this becomes a national story. You're cutting in, for ABs during college football games like we saw a year ago with Aaron Judge. That may or may not happen, but I just think him as the poster boy for all those Braves home runs, that coming after all he dealt with a year ago. I mean, that's a really great story. And then you got that with him challenging Ronald Acuna Jr. in the conversations here in the MVP race on this team. I mean, it's incredible the season that Olson's having when we're talking about all these home runs that this Braves team's hitting right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's slowed down on the home run chase on this recent homestand, but as we've seen, like those kinds of things can change very quickly. And we'll see how many home runs he's able to end up with. I don't know if 60 is in the cards, but you can't rule it out because mathematically, you have a couple of 2-homer games. All of a sudden, your pace of 55 homers with 30-something games to play jumps up to a pace for 60 home runs. But it is obviously incredibly hard to do that. If there was more of a record in the National League that would, be befitting of cutting into other sporting events or other things to show you the live chase for home runs, I think maybe Matt Olson would give that treatment, but I'm not sure we're going to go down that road again. But it is crazy to think about that right after Aaron Judge just got back to 60-plus home runs, which is something that I don't think a lot of us expected to see again, as you mentioned, post performance-enhancing drugs era. Now you've got somebody who is pushing for that, and Shohei Ohtani in the other league, who's also going to potentially push for that. And now he's going to focus all of his attention on hitting. That should be interesting to watch. But yeah, Matt Olson's season has been incredible. It's been one of the big reasons for the Braves' success. The way that this lineup has really gelled when he dropped into the middle of the order from that 2 spot. I mean, it has been a startling reversal of what was starting to look like a bit of a frustrating season for him. And wow, the entire script was absolutely flipped when he dropped down in the order. And Ozzy Albies also has benefited quite a bit from hitting second in the order, and hopefully he'll be back there soon.
So we talked about Marcell Ozuna from the offset and just how red hot he's been of late. And think about what he was able to do against the Mets. In 3 games, he went 8 for 11. That's a 727 average, 4 homers, 7 RBI, 6 runs and a walk. He has 15 RBI in 10 games against the Mets this season. In the last 20 years, only 8 Braves have driven him more against the Mets across a season. And remember, Ozuna had fewer games. The new schedule will cut in these division matchups to 13. Grant, I mean, this is the absolute definition of damage.
Yeah, it truly is. And the Mets, there always seems to be one Braves hitter, whether it's yearly or annually, and somebody that does it time after time that really wears them out. Of course, it's Chipper Jones. Freddie Freeman did it for a while. I think Austin Riley also does some pretty serious damage against the New York Mets. But yeah, for Marcell Ozuna in that series was in the middle of a lot of rallies for the Braves. He was providing some power, some big hits. And, again, this is just a testament to what this lineup is and to him being able to turn his season around when I think in late April, you could make a very good case that he was within days, maybe a week of being off the Braves roster entirely when they got into that roster crunch and were trying to bring Travis d'Arnaud back from the injured list. But Marcell got hot in Miami. He did cool off in July. There's no 2 ways about that. But credit to him and to Eddie Rosario for that matter. They were able to turn it around and start hitting at a time in which a couple of other Braves kind of cooled off. And Atlanta, as a result, got themselves a 7-2 homestand, did the Braves, and a chance to continue their march towards the best record in the National League. And we have a very fascinating road trip matchup with the Los Angeles Dodgers. So maybe a few big home runs for Marcell Ozuna in that series would be in order.
Yeah, and 74 weighted run create a plus with a mere 7 homers back in 2021. 2022, he hits 12% below league average. Obviously, there were outside influences around all that, being placed on administrative leave and all that. But I mean, 125 weighted run create a plus right now, his best in a 162 game season since 2017. You mentioned it, the turnaround. At the All-Star break this season, there were exactly 30 qualified players with a worse F WAR than him. So that's how bad he was then. Since then, he's been a top 25 player when you go off of weighted run create a plus. I mean, the turnaround has been absolutely dramatic. Should probably serve as a warning, by the way, because the Braves, they have not had Ozuna operating at this level going into the postseason in 3 years. So just a further demonstration there of how great this offense has been, and a little more on the domination against the Mets. For the 6th consecutive year, the Braves have won that season series, going 10-3 this year. They've claimed 15 of the last 20 in the rivalry going back to last season. Outscored them 138-73 in that span. And I want to touch on Charlie Morton for a second. A 7.32 ERA before he was allowed to only face teams hailing from New York. He spun 3 straight scoreless starts, 11 strikeouts over 7 innings against the Mets on Wednesday in the series finale and season finale in their matchups. He was averaging 43% whiff rate in that matchup. He's got 21 strikeouts with 2 walks in his last 2 outings. Grant, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's very good. And when you consider, that start where he faced the Mets, he kept them off the board for 5 innings, but he walked 7 guys. It was a bizarre pitching line. And I think in that start, maybe that was something just kind of started to get unlocked, because the base hits have been harder to get off Morton. And he was able to really dial things in the start against the New York Yankees. And of course, the one against the Mets that you just mentioned. And this is as good, I think, as we've seen Charlie Morton in a couple of years, especially in consecutive outings, as he's been able to pile up those strikeouts. The curveball looks dynamic, elite, whatever the word is you want to throw on it, but he's been able to command a lot better. I also think he's done a nice job of mixing some other pitches, which maybe have kept some hitters from feeling like, hey, it's one-dimensional. He's really going to depend on this curveball here. I'm going to lay off. Or, hey, he can't locate his fastball. The curveball is a swing and miss pitch where I'm supposed to chase. I'm not going to chase. I think that was part of the problem that he was dealing with. And he had a 4-start stretch where he lost all 4 of those prior to those starts against the Mets and the Yankees combined. And it's almost like if you were to sit there and look at the two, the numbers for each of those samples, it's the polar opposite. So again, it's crazy to see, the adjustment that has been made and how quickly it has happened. Sometimes it's for guys at the plate we'll talk about. Sometimes it's on the mound, but I know how difficult it is during the season to make wholesale changes. And that's why so many pitchers are not trying to reinvent the wheel. They're just trying to find the 1 or 2 things that could unlock some consistency. And I think for Charlie, it was a big release point thing, and it looks like he's got that ironed out.
Well, the Braves now hit the road for 10 games on the West Coast, culminating in a 4-game series against the Dodgers and what figures to be a postseason preview. But we're getting ahead of ourselves there, because first they have a weekend series against the Giants with Spencer Strider and Max Fried getting the first 2 starts of the series. TBD on Sunday, which could be Jared Schuster. The Braves just took 2 out of 3 against the Giants at Truist Park, including a 10K day from Strider. What's your focus on for this matchup?
Yeah, I think you want to continue to see the starting pitching doing what it has done of late. I mean, that was a huge focus. A couple of weeks ago, you were wondering, hey, is the Braves starting rotation going to kind of figure this out? Because it wasn't just, hey, let's talk about Yanni Chirinos not getting it done in the 5th spot. It was Spencer Strider's had a couple of rough ones. Bryce Elder had a few rough ones since the All-Star break, as had Charlie Morton we just talked about. And even Max Fried kind of ran into some trouble in Pittsburgh. So you were just wanting to see a little bit more consistency there. I think the Braves offense is capable of answering the call each and every night. But I've also enjoyed seeing this bullpen start to really find itself, and maybe the pattern that we will see for October's success. Raisel Iglesias throwing the ball extremely well, as is Joe Jimenez. You've got a healthy A.J. Minter back. Pierce Johnson's been a nice pickup. I think Kirby Yates has been more good than bad, certainly. You could have Dylan Lee back in the mix sometime soon. And, hey, our old friend Jesse Chavez is also working towards getting back in there. And you throw that in with the rest of that mix, and I think Colin McHugh looks good lately. Michael Tonkin's thrown some big innings. I don't know if I've left anybody out. I probably have. Brad Hand, let's just throw his name out there. The Braves have a very nice bullpen group, and we'll see what they're able to do down the stretch to continue to get themselves in October form, because as you know and I know, and anybody watching this probably knows, a big part of the Braves' success in 2021 was the strength and just the utter dominance of that bullpen. And this looks like a group that's starting to find itself at a very important time of the year.
Yeah, look, Max Fried hasn't been dominant level Max Fried yet. He allowed 3 runs with 2 homers last time out against these Giants. He had a mere 2 whiffs on his vaunted curveball, just a 17% rate there. I want to see, 5 starts in if he can get a little bit back to being the Max Fried that we're used to seeing. And then there's Spencer Strider, 227 strikeouts, closing in on the top 5 among Braves pitchers in a single season, the expansion era. He's 11 from Javier Vasquez in 2009, 14 off John Smoltz in 1997. So 6 or 7 potential starts still with him. We'll see how the Braves line things up over that last week or so with the division and a likely bye in hand. Smoltz's 276 remains in shot. So we can talk about all the home runs all day long, but Strider's strikeout chase, I mean, that's definitely a storyline worth your attention and one we'll obviously be watching over this last month. That'll do it for this episode of BPTV. Make sure if you haven't already, you subscribe, turn on notifications, and tell a friend to keep this thing growing. Until next time, I'm Cory McCartney. He's Grant McAuley, and we'll see you soon, Braves Country.